Good morning. My name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner that will be presiding over this morning's zoning hearing. Applications to rezone property in Lee County go through 2 steps. The first is a hearing before the hearing examiner where testimony and evidence is accepted, documents and expert testimony. And at the conclusion of that hearing, as the hearing examiner, I prepare a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners are the final decision makers in this case. If you would like an opportunity to speak to the Board of County Commissioners at the final hearing, you must participate by putting testimony or evidence into the record at the hearing examiner level. That's the hearing that we're having here today. All testimony and evidence will be accepted under oath, which I will administer to the entire room at one time. If you intend on speaking at the podium, I ask you to please raise your hand when that time comes. For those of you who may not be familiar with the process of a zoning case, we will start with the applicant. They are representing the property owners or the contract purchasers in this matter. They will present their request, which in this case is an application to rezone property to the residential plan development district. The reason why they're requesting that district is it affords more flexibility in site design while still complying with the Lee County land development regulations. Their presentation may take some time. Oftentimes, the applicant's presentation involves more than one witness, sometimes expert witnesses. There will be a PowerPoint and exhibits entered into the record. At the conclusion of their presentation, the county planner that reviewed the application and prepared the staff report will speak. They will come to the podium. They will not repeat the applicant's presentation, but they will address the high points and maybe some specific conditions and the reasoning behind those recommended conditions during their presentation. At the conclusion of staff's presentation, I may ask questions of the parties, but then after that, I will go to the public. We will open up the floor for members of the public that wish to speak. If you haven't already, I urge you to fill out one of these public participation forms. I will go through these one at a time. When I get to the bottom, I'll ask again if there's anyone in the room that would like to speak, and we'll go from there. The reason why I encourage you to fill this out is it gives us the correct spelling of your name, and if you provide your email address, we can give you a copy of my recommendation once it's issued, or we can notice you of further action on this case. For instance, if we don't finish this case by noon today and it gets continued to another day, you will receive notification of that. After my recommendation comes out, you will receive further notifications of the final board hearing on this case so that you have an opportunity to decide whether you want to attend that hearing. If you don't have an email address, if you put your mailing address, we will send it to you versus mail. Just a few words about public participation. Please try to organize your thoughts. You will get only one opportunity to speak. And during your opportunity to speak, that's your chance to ask any questions you may have regarding the application, clarification of issues you may not understand, and concerns you may have with the recommendation. Oftentimes I find in cases like this that the public may not be totally in favor or opposed to the application, but they have specific concerns. If you share those concerns with us, you give us an opportunity to perhaps address those concerns through conditioning, or you allow the applicant the opportunity to clarify certain issues for you that may give you a heightened comfort level. I know it's not easy to speak in front of a group. I will assure you we are very friendly here. You may speak as long as you want, but again, you will have only one opportunity to speak. There'll be no raising your hand afterwards, no requesting to come back to the podium. We have to keep the momentum of the hearing going, especially since we have so many people here. I anticipate that there's a possibility we will not finish today. My staff has prepared 3 alternative dates where we may continue this hearing to. I hope to get to public input today and at least get most of you onto the record. But if we don't and you didn't get an opportunity to speak, you will have an opportunity to speak at the next hearing. Okay, I'm going to administer the oath to everyone in the room that intends on speaking. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you enter into the record will be the truth?
Yes.
I do.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to welcome everyone from the public that's here. I am excited to see so much participation and look forward to your comments.
Thank you. To the administrative point that you just raised, your office did provide us with dates. Friday, May 5th is the date that all of our witnesses can attend.
Okay. Staff, have you had an opportunity to check your schedule?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I will let you know shortly.
So can I assume that the other 2 dates are not going to work at all?
They don't work.
Okay. So I'm going to ask my staff to please come up with 2 additional dates, just in case this doesn't work out for you, Shahram. He may have hearings or something else going on that day.
So I'm going to move me to the next slide, if you would.
Oh, I hope we
Oh, the clicker doesn't work?
Not yet. Good morning. While we're having technical difficulties, for the record, my name is Neil Montgomery. I'm the attorney for the applicant. With us today, we have Gary Fluharty. I saw him in the audience. The applicant, Tim Keene, is a registered professional engineer in the state of Florida.
It works.
Alexis Crespo is an expert in planning. Church Roberts is our ecologist. Ted Treesh is our expert in transportation. And Josh Kelly, landscape architect. One of the differences about today's case from others, you might see a lot of times property is zoned agriculture, and that's kind of been a holding pattern for the county. In this case, the property already has zoning. It has C1, which is an old commercial zoning that was there before the beginning of time, and RS1, which is a standard single-family zoning. We're asking to change, as the hearing examiner noted, to residential plan development to allow 180 multifamily units, which include 89 bonus densities. And with that, and before I turn it over to Ms. Crespo, I did want to say that we want to make sure that all of the information that's in the staff report is officially part of the record and competent substantial evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. And one word to your consulting team, because we have so many members of the public here, if they can go into extra detail when explaining the way the stormwater management system works. You know, most people aren't familiar with that. When it's usually just, you know, people like staff here, it's not necessary because we all understand.
He's going to help us with that, so
Okay.
thank you for reminding us.
Same thing, Mr. Treesh, if you're here, I don't see you, but you're in the back. Please, if you could go into a little bit more detail regarding how traffic is estimated for a project such as this, and manuals that are published based on information that's collected from other similar projects throughout the country. A little more attention to that so that our public can be more informed about the documents that were relied upon for the recommendations and conclusions that were made in this case. Good morning, Alexis.
Good morning. Alexis Crespo with RVI Planning, representing the applicant. May I present you with the PowerPoint presentation and some 11x17s of our master concept plan?
Okay, thank you. PowerPoint will be applicant Exhibit 1, and the enlarged master concept plan will be Exhibit 2. Thank you. Just give me a moment here, Alexis.
We also have the master concept plan on an aerial and 24x36 format, if you would like that as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I will. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. As Neil noted, we're here to request rezoning of this 9-acre infill subject property from RS1 and C1 to a unified residential plan development. We are in agreement with your staff on recommendation for approval that this is consistent with the Land Development Code and the Lee Plan as we'll outline today. And the only item outlined in our 48-hour letter was an enhanced setback that we'll walk through. I think the public would be very interested in hearing how we've moved the buildings further into the site as part of that last 48-hour letter we submitted. Sorry.
Do you by any chance have exhibits on like what the view will look like standing on the ground?
Yes,
And
ma'am. We
looking
have
at the
line of
project?
sites that Mr. Kelly will present.
Excellent. Thank you.
The subject property is outlined in yellow. This is a bona fide infill development project. As you can see very clearly, we have development on all 3 sides, and we front a state-maintained arterial roadway, which is Bayshore Road or State Road 78. Uses surrounding us include Carriage Village to our north and east, and then we have single-family subdivision to our west. We have substantial frontage on Bayshore Road. However, a lot of that frontage is just a little flag lot portion of the property, not very usable except anything for indigenous, as you'll see. The property is well within the future urban area per the Lee Plan. It isn't within your central urban future land use category. We are also governed by the North Fort Myers Planning Community and those Lee Plan policies and Land Development Code regulations, which we are in full compliance with. We've noted the existing mix of commercial and RS1 zoning, and this property was proposed for rezoning back in 2008 and took several years. It was proposing a commercial plan development of 85,000 square feet of retail, which is also consistent with the central urban future land use category. That ultimately was withdrawn, apparently a victim of the recession, but the site has been looked at over the years for a variety of both commercial and residential uses. This slide depicts the future land use map. You can see the property outlined in blue is entirely within central urban, and all surrounding lands are within central urban, which is a designated future urban area per the Lee Plan. This is where the policies direct new development and growth, as it is serviced by infrastructure, public services close to employment, in areas with existing development. From the zoning standpoint, you can see we are largely RS1 zoning. The strip along Bayshore Road that I refer to as the flag lot portion of it is C1 zoning. Our surrounding zoning districts include RS1, mobile home to the north and east, and then commercial lining the Bayshore Road frontage to our south. Before we get into the details of the master concept plan, we wanted to also just set up, again, the context of the site within the future urban area of Lee County, as well as within this dynamic and developing Bayshore Road corridor. So you can see, again, the property outlined in blue. All lands surrounding us, with the exception of some conservation areas, are within central urban, again, areas where the county is looking to direct and accommodate new growth. Then as you step east towards the interstate, you still have suburban future land use, which allows for densities of up to 6 units per acre. So this is not an area intended for low density forms of development, and actually quite the opposite for the future land use. Along those lines, this corridor is again progressing through the development process. You can see many properties that front State Road 78 are within existing approved plan developments, some of them very large scale as you approach the interstate. And this is just indicative of the level of existing development approvals along the corridor and the appropriateness for this site to be converted from vacant underutilized lands to an infill multifamily project to accommodate a variety of housing types in this area. So getting into the details of our proposed residential plan development, as Neil noted, we are seeking a maximum of 180 multifamily dwelling units. We are allowed 10 units per acre by right, or by standard base density range within central urban, which gets us to about 91 units, and then we're proposing 89 additional units via bonus density. And to get to that level of density, we have to utilize the Greater Pine Island TDU program, which was a program created by Lee County and really incentivize. This is the highest bonus density you can get because they're really looking to conserve the rural coastal areas that are subject to flooding in the coastal high hazard area and directing, again, new growth to these inland sites that are well served by infrastructure along evacuation routes, et cetera. So we're fully meeting the intent that the county provided for when adopting that program back in 2015. We have access directly to Bayshore Road, so we're not routing traffic through our lower density neighbors to the north, east, or west, certainly based on those development patterns. We are seeking a 4-story maximum building height as the upper limit of building height that could go on the site. Unlike many multifamily projects I've worked on, and certainly any bonus density project, we are not seeking any deviations from parking. That's a pretty common deviation. It can be hard to fit when you're trying to fit in those number of units, but this project does fully comply with the multifamily parking and guest parking requirements per the Land Development Code. We have buffers along all property lines. Josh Kelly has renderings of what those buffers will look like, but where we abut single family and Carriage Village, we are doing the 30-foot wide type F landscape buffer. That is the widest buffer with the most plantings in this land development code. So certainly meeting the code fully there in terms of screening lower density uses that we'll get into in a little bit more detail. Along our northern boundaries, we have 15-foot type B buffers, and along the roadway, we do have the enhanced North Fort Myers 20-foot wide type D buffer. We also have indigenous open space and 45% open space on the property, whereas the code only requires 40%. So I'll walk you through some of these components. Sometimes I feel like it's good to summarize some of those key points and then actually show you where all those items are. So we have a single point of access from Bayshore Road. Because of the width of this area of the parcel, we can't accommodate another access point and have that connect into the site. So this frontage is basically unusable from an access standpoint. We met with FDOT and they were not supportive of 2 points of ingress egress to their arterial roadway. It would not meet spacing requirements. So we have a wide entrance as well as a gated entry, but also an emergency entry here at this location. We have corresponded with the Lee County Sheriff as well as the fire district, and they have indicated their recommendation of approval for this proposed design based upon the site constraints and based upon Tim Keen's design of this entry area that can facilitate ingress egress should something get blocked in that area. There is a transit stop directly in front of the property along Bayshore Road. So we're looking for higher densities, and where do you want to put those higher density multifamily types of housing? You want to put that near transit so that people can readily access those services and get in and around the county, not only by using their vehicle, but also by transit. So
Where is the stop?
the stop will be right here.
On the same side of the road?
Yes, ma'am. And it's an existing stop. We are proposing to enhance it by adding a bike rack and expanding the pad where people can stand and wait for the bus. So that will be located there. I mentioned our buffers. I'll pause a moment. We have our 20-foot wide type D buffer. Because we're in North Fort Myers overlay, they do require a wider type D buffer. We have our type F here where we're abutting Carriage Village, because they are basically, they're treated as a single family use per the buffering code. So that again is the widest, most heavily vegetated buffer within the code. We are also implementing that type F buffer here in order to screen the single family residents to our west. We could have proposed a 15-foot type C with a wall, but a lot of the design that we worked through with the applicant was to push everything to the center of the project and try to put as much separation, spatial separation between our neighbors as possible. And then with the vegetation that will be installed, there'll be a high level of opacity and screening based on those planting requirements. On our northern boundary, we do a type B buffer where we have a stormwater management lake abutting adjacent properties. We are seeking a deviation for the stormwater management lake to be 30 foot from the property line instead of 50 feet. This allows us to do more indigenous restoration over on the northwest side of the site and just make better use of the property. But we will have the type B buffer installed here with trees and hedges in order to provide physical separation between the lake and the adjacent property. Our indigenous open space areas are in this northwest corner and along this strip on Bayshore Road. We are at 1.76 acres of indigenous open space. That's 1% below the requirement. We worked with staff to maximize those areas, and we are proposing restoration to offset the 1% reduction in indigenous that we are seeking. In terms of the actual development, we have 4 buildings shown up to a maximum of 4 stories or 60 feet in height. The surrounding parking fully meets the land development code and was designed along the perimeter so the buildings would be as far into the site as possible. What you saw in your 48-hour letter was increased setbacks of these buildings into the site. We had corresponded with staff. We had sought a 20-foot setback for the buildings at our initial submittal. Staff recommended a 40-foot setback for those 60-foot tall buildings. And we took another look at our site plan and the constraints and actually submitted to you that we'll increase that to 60 feet. So all buildings, that is applicable to all buildings and all property lines, the buildings will be a minimum of 60 feet from the PD perimeter if they are built to 60 feet tall. If they're 40 feet tall, there would be a 40-foot setback. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio there of setback to building height, which is really double the standard in the land development code. Chapter 34 prescribes that the minimum PD setback is either the buffer yard or half the building height, whichever is greater, and we're actually doing up the full setback based on the building height. So really double what the code says achieves compatibility. We do have gating shown at our entrance in order to provide security for our residents and surrounding neighbors as well. You'll note there's no amenity on site. The area is emerging. It's adjacent or proximate to a neighborhood center within North Fort Myers. The US 41 corridor is rapidly redeveloping, so really the urban area that is coming along in this area will really be the amenity for these residents, and that actually allows us to be more dense with the product, and then also mitigate a potential nuisance to our neighbors, as oftentimes you hear residents not wanting a clubhouse pool amenity close to their existing home. So we won't have that issue with the site, as we're not proposing amenity.
Okay, would you mind clarifying for me what's in the southeast corner of the site, these markings?
That is a wall. Are we looking here?
Right here.
The whole entrance.
So that's the entry that curves.
So what are these markings here?
Those are medians, concrete areas to guide traffic in and out to create lane separation.
Be like a residence. Yeah. Would you like me to?
Would you like Tim Keene to
Yes,
point out on
I
that?
need a better understanding of what all these markings are.
For the record, Tim Keene, engineer for the project. So we have 3 lanes, 2 lanes coming in and 1 lane exiting. So one would be like a residence bypass lane, one would be like a guest lane where it might take more time for someone to key into the project, and then one is an exit lane. And then we have a break in the median, so people, who needs to turn around, they can't get in, then they can exit the project.
Okay, so this gate here, is that a pedestrian gate?
No, so that is the mitigation we're offering for not having 2 access points onto Bayshore Road. We are offering a separate emergency access gate available only to the EMS and first responders.
So that's the emergency access
Yeah.
gate?
So it either be a slide gate or a swing gate, and access would be provided. There are various methods, such as evac radios or Knox locks, Knox is a brand of locks that the EMS and the fire departments and have a key to, so they could get through that gate. It would not be a gate traveled through by residents.
So the bulk of the traffic will be coming in.
And then swinging.
Turning west.
Yes.
And going through,
Either lane, depending on whether they're a resident or a
Right.
guest.
and no manned gatehouse or anything.
No manned gatehouse. And these days, a lot of them are remotely manned. They have a little, they have, through Wi-Fi communications, someone can appear on a screen and things like that. And so they are manned in a way, but not in person.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Nope, no
Thanks,
problem.
Tim.
You're welcome.
And those are really the main components of the master concept plan to discuss. Talked about the perimeter buffers, the 60-foot setback if the buildings are 60 feet high. We do have 4 deviations, one for the proposed access from State Road 78 Bayshore Road, one for the lake setback of 30 foot off Carriage Village, 1% reduction to indigenous open space, and then the last one is the location of this type B buffer wall here. Because this is a drive aisle entry road and it's proximate to single family in Carriage Village or mobile home in Carriage Village, the requirement would be to put the wall 25 foot off the property line. We're proposing to place it a minimum of 5 feet off the property line. Still installing all the type B plantings, but because that's kind of a pinch point, we do need to locate the wall different than the code applies for, but still meet all the buffering requirements.
Okay, thank you.
With that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Kelly to talk about the buffers, and I'll be back to talk about lead plan compliance and the LDC after their presentations.
For the record, Joseph or Josh Kelly, landscape architect.
Could you state your qualifications for the record before you?
Okay, I believe you have my resume on file. I've been a landscape architect for 20 years in Lee County, and I've been accepted as an expert witness in this forum before.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Current one, just to make sure you have it in the record.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You go by Josh?
Yes,
Is that what you were explaining?
yeah. Thank my parents for that. Okay, so is there a, can I get back to the master concept plan?
Yeah, just go back yeah.
There we go. Okay. On the eastern, northern, and western boundaries of the property, we abut single-family residential. Multifamily and single-family requires a type B buffer, which is 15 feet. We've gone with a different buffer on the east and west sides because we may have parking that's closer than 125 feet to the adjacent residential. So that puts us into a type E or type F buffer, which is a 30-foot buffer with a wall and some extra trees. This is a type F buffer, which is what we've chosen to go with. It's 30 foot in width. It has 66 shrubs that are 48 inches at time of planting and maintained at 60 inches as a minimum. And it has 10 trees, and this is per 100 linear feet. The trees are 10 foot in height, 4 foot spread, and a 2-inch caliper at time of planting. Go back.
And where will that buffer be featured?
That buffer will be featured on the eastern boundary and on the western boundary, over here.
Okay, and will it be for the entire length of the eastern boundary and the entire?
It will not be needed for the entire length.
Okay, can you,
Only where the parking may be 125 feet from the residential, say this corner here, you would go 125 feet, and from there to the end would be a type B buffer. Also on this side, 125 feet away from the nearest point of that parking is somewhere up in here. Then you'd have type B buffer.
Do you have
after
an
that.
illustration of a type B buffer?
I do not. The type B buffer is much like a type F, except that it's a shorter buffer. It's half the width, so 15 feet, and 5 trees rather than 10. And there's also 66 shrubs, which will be 24 inches at time of planting.
Okay, thank you.
We've got some site distance here. This is on the eastern side, the eastern boundary, and you see the 30-foot buffer length right here with the plantings. And then this would be a group of people about 6 feet high, 15 feet back, so that would be close to where the residences are. So the view from there, then if you have to look over that buffer, you're going to miss the building. So the buffer will cover the building from that distance.
Okay, so that gray shaded tree, what is
The
that?
gray shaded tree, because this buffer is a little different from the western buffer. The eastern buffer is not only an indigenous preserve area, but it's also a buffer. So we're going to preserve the existing trees that are in that area, and then we're going to enhance that buffer to bring it up to whatever level needed to make a type F buffer. So we'll have, and those will be all native plants, so it'll be more like an indigenous restoration, which acts as a buffer.
So what does the gray tree represent?
The gray tree represents existing pine trees that are in that area, which are fairly large.
And this is along the eastern property line?
That's along the eastern property line. So on this side would be the trailer park, and then this side would be the building.
And that's for the length of the parking aisle?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, anywhere that we're 125 feet away from the parking, away from the pavement there, the parking lot.
Well, where are you 125 feet away from?
That would be along this is the parking area here, so anywhere that this residential area is 125 feet away from that, so probably somewhere around here all the way down to here.
And then what does it drop off to?
Well, then it goes to a 15-foot type B buffer. Once you get up in here, this is the retention lake here. So once you get up in here, you got 15 feet of just trees and shrubs, 5 trees per 100 feet and 66 shrubs. Also, the northern boundary is going to be a type B as well. But it also has the lake and the indigenous preserve also as buffering these lots up there.
And what about along the west side?
Okay, along the west side, along the west side, it's just a straight type F buffer. So it's a 30-foot buffer with the 10 trees and 66 large shrubs per 100 feet.
So how is that different from the east side?
It is the same as the east side, except the east side also has some indigenous vegetation that's going to be preserved.
Indigenous on the west side?
There's no indigenous on the west side.
I see. And then in this example, can you explain the site view of the people on the ground?
Sure. Oops. This is the property line right here.
And this is adjacent to the single-family project to the west.
That's correct. That's these guys over here. So you have the property line, and there's a 15-foot yard, and then this would be people standing in their lanai or on their back deck. And this shows where the vegetation. And I want to note that the trees shown here are at mature growth, so about 5 years growth. So they would, this would completely block a 60-foot building from their view.
In 5 years.
Yes. Okay. Then on the south side, along the south side here, this is a 20-foot type D buffer, which is basically the same as the type B buffer. It's 5 trees and 66 shrubs per 100 linear feet. The difference is because of the overlay, this is 20 feet instead of 15 feet. And this piece right here really doesn't require a buffer because it's open space. It's going to be existing and restored indigenous area.
And what does it mean when you say restored indigenous?
The indigenous area is in here, and the environmental guy can explain this a little better, but they've been distressed by exotics that have grown in, Brazilian pepper, Melaleuca, things like that. Once those are removed, they'll leave open spaces and gaps that are going to have to be replanted and restored.
And is that anticipated in that strip along
Yes.
Bayshore?
I believe half of it is, can just be preserved, but this half over here has to be restored, and we have a plan for that.
So after the exotic vegetation is removed, the
Then-
developer will go back in
Then
and
they'll go
plant?
back in and replant with native vegetation. And it's vegetation that's specific to this environmental,
Trees and shrubs or mostly?
trees, shrubs, ground covers, grasses.
So it'll have a very natural appearance.
Very natural appearance. It'll be tuned for this specific place and the types of wildlife that are expected to still be there or to move in.
Thank you.
Then we have this section. Do you want me to talk about the deviation 5 with the entry? Mhm.
I can, you want me to do that when, as I get that exhibit?
Okay.
Did the hearing examiner need more discussion on that wall placement right at the entry road?
Whoever is the best person to speak to that can speak to it during their presentation time.
Okay. So that concludes my presentation of the buffers.
Okay, thank you,
Just
Josh.
single family?
Sorry?
Just a single family slide. What could be built?
Oh, is that? We had one more slide to show you that under the current zoning, single family, we would be able to build a 2-story house within 35 feet of the property line that would have a pool enclosure and no buffer, because single family to single family does not require a buffer, and there's no open space requirement for single family development. So if we chose to just develop this as the zoning that's currently there, this would be the sight line right into the back of the house from the adjacent property.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, Tim Keene, professional engineer. Keene Development is my company name, and I've been tendered as an expert witness in this forum previously.
Engineering, right?
Engineering. I'm also a contractor, but engineering as well.
Okay, thank you.
As an expert witness in engineering.
And you're also the chairman of the City of Fort Myers Planning Board, right?
Currently sitting as the chair of the City of Fort Myers Planning Board, yes. I've been on that board for about 15 years, surprisingly.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Is that a conflict of interest?
That's a different governmental entity. Who asked that? Okay, you can ask that during the public time.
My role of that is volunteer role, as a layperson on that board. It's not, I'm not an employee.
Well,
of
it's
the
a
city of
different
Fort-
governmental entity.
Yeah, but I'm not an employee of the city of Fort
Not
Myers.
unincorporated Lee County, it's the city of Fort Myers. But I'd like to continue
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
momentum. of
okay.
the presentation.
To pick up a little bit on the entry question that you'd asked earlier, I want to give a little bit of clarification. And I don't know, I'm sure it's in the staff report, but I'm going to hand you the scheduled deviations that we presented in our application. And we prepared on the second page.
This will be applicant exhibit 4. Do you have a slide of this?
Unfortunately, we did not put this in our slide. I apologize.
Or maybe you can just walk me through it.
Yes,
using
yeah.
that.
I'll walk you through, I'll point, I guess. So our entry is located kind of due to spacing requirements on FDOT. So this is a 5-lane, well, it's a 4-lane road with a bidirectional median, so there's no median in the roadway. So when we plan entrances, we like to align.
Okay, can I ask everyone to please be quiet? If you need to speak to your neighbor, please step outside and come back in.
So when we plan entrances, we like to align them so that we don't have any overlapping left turn conflicts. So we've placed this entrance here as it aligns with the opposing road and meets the FDOT spacing requirements. As mentioned previously, we can't have 2 entrances because we would not meet the FDOT spacing requirements. So aligning it here causes us to have a buffer problem along this little pinch point here at the corner. So the exhibit that I showed you, or that I presented you just now, is a blow-up that was in our application, showing how we would put an 8-foot concrete wall. The minimum pinch point would be about 5 feet. We would put all the required landscaping in, all the trees would go in.
Well, what does that entail for the benefit of the public?
So again, the buffer requirement is a double hedgerow, which is 66 shrubs per 100 lineal feet, planted at 3 foot on center, and you typically pick a shrub that will grow to a nice height to create the buffer effect, and then 10 trees per 100 lineal foot. So it's a fairly dense buffer planting as far as all of our buffers that we typically put in.
Do you have an exhibit that shows what that will look like standing on the ground for the people in Carriage Park?
At this particular
Village?
point, we do
Yes.
not have a line of sight exhibit for that little point right there. No, I apologize.
If we carry over to the 5th, we'll put that on our list of things to bring.
I think it would be beneficial to have it from every boundary.
So but what, on the exhibit that I did present to you, the nearest home is 60 feet away from that corner, that common corner right there. So the nearest, in this case, it's a trailer home, is 60 feet away from that common corner. So we would be 65 feet, 67 feet roughly, that wall would be 67 feet from the
The idea is they're going to use their backyard, so it's not, it would be nice to be able to see it from the backyard.
Yeah. But it's not something that we really have in our control.
Right, you're at the mercy of Florida DOT. They're
Right.
telling you where you can have your access, so you're trying to accommodate
Correct, you're right. So we're trying
with the
to,
wall and the landscaping to block the
Exactly.
headlights coming in from the neighbors.
exactly. So addressing the deviation, let's see. We've talked about the access point, we've talked about the little buffer deviation. Okay, let me move on. So water service for this site is available from Lee County Utilities. There is a water line running along the front of the property. Sanitary sewer service is available from Florida Governmental Utility Authority. There is a force main on the south side of Bayshore Road, but it's west of the site. We would have to go under Bayshore Road and extend a force main along the south side of Bayshore Road to the west. It's roughly at the location where don't know if it's Dodges Creek or Powell Creek bypass, comes under Bayshore Road, just to the west side of the single-family homes that are adjacent to us. They do not have sewer in their neighborhood. They have water, but not sewer in
You're
there.
going to extend the infrastructure to serve the project.
To serve this project, yeah, it'd just be a force main extension in the right.
Water you could just tie in, but.
Correct, the water main's right in front of the site, but on the south side. And I'll give me a think. So there was a realignment of Bayshore Road at some point, and that's why we have this little thin piece of property left over. So that they took right away from the north side of Bayshore Road. So down in this is, the Lee County Co-op's offices are right here. Here's the drainage bypass that comes under. So the sewer's roughly in this area. So there's actually a nice clean piece of right of way where the road roughly used to run that allow us to bring a force main. Not too far. We don't have to go too far to get to the sewer. It'd only be like a 4-inch force main for a project like this. So I'll use this also for water management. In our investigation of the site, the Carriage Village neighborhood drains into this bypass over here on the west. And there's a set of drainage inlets along our north property line. They're like right on the property line. And their roadways basically tie into those drainage inlets, and then that drainage is taken westerly over here to the bypass. The inlets are right on the property line. We're not proposing to modify them, change them, tie into them. We're not draining into them or anything like that. There'll be actually a berm between us and the edge of those inlets.
So their flooding situation will get no better or worse?
Yeah, our plan is not to aggravate or cause them to get any worse.
And that's achieved by?
That's achieved by basically berming our drainage off from them. So we do not tie into them, we do not flow their way. We'll be bringing all of our drainage to the FDOT right away. They have a similar situation here. There actually is like a concrete flume along here for a way, then it ties into a pipe and it brings it over to the entrance to Carriage Village and then down to an FDOT pipe under their entrance. It appears that that flume was installed by the mobile home park at some point to handle their drainage issues. We don't plan to aggravate this. And this little panhandle section, we're going to remove the exotics. We're going to do the restoration. We are not changing the grade in that area. We are not proposing to build it up. We're not proposing to make a water management area out of it. It's about 40 feet in depth. We are leaving it where actually it's going to be nicer than it is today, because about 60% of it is Brazilian pepper. The other part of it is mixed vegetation with some exotic that we'll have to remove. When Church Roberts comes up, he can go over the flux map and kind of give a better description of that. We spent a lot of time on the site, identifying in pretty good detail the land use areas, the cover areas. So this area is going to just basically, from a grading standpoint, remain as is, and then we're just going to enhance the planting in this area here, and that will maintain the buffer between the trailer park and Bayshore Road. So we're not going to take this out. We're not going to, we have to take the exotics out. That'll open it up for a period of time, but then the vegetation will be planted so that it grows back.
Okay, so their stormwater management system will operate as it always has?
Correct. We're not
good or
going
for
to
bad?
impact it. We're not going to, we don't really have a way to bring it into our site. So our only outfall, we can't go west to the single family. We can't go north or east into Carriage Village. So we have to come out to the right of way of FDOT.
Okay, so stormwater falls on your property.
Correct. It stays on our property.
Explain, why don't you bring up your site plan, explain how the stormwater is routed once it hits your property?
So typically,
Do you have your master concept plan?
we have this one right here. It didn't.
Okay.
It didn't.
So it's going to hit the impervious area.
Going to hit the impervious area. It'll be collected in stormwater pipes. We do have a little bit of a drainage swale over here. It'll bring it around here. This basically swell is intended to provide some of our water quality pretreatment before we discharge into our pond. And our pond, the reason we're showing a small pond here, that's about a half-acre pond. It's the minimum size allowed by a water management district. Ponds are good at removing nutrients, certain types of nutrients. Dry pretreatment areas are good at removing other types of nutrients. And then this pond will have a pipe that exits out the front of the project. Now none of this is designed yet. It's something that would come in the future as we go through a development order and FDOT permitting process. But there would be a control structure on the lake, and then the outfall would come to the right-of-way of Bayshore Road. And then, from what I can tell so far, the drainage goes east, continues east, and then crosses near Hart Road, crosses underneath Bayshore Road, and then makes its way to the river.
Okay, so back to the site. It's going to collect on the impervious areas.
Correct.
It's going to be directed to the western boundary to a swale, a pipe.
A pretreatment system, yeah.
It's going to,
Yeah,
the water's going to get filtered out. It's going to make it to the dry retention area, but there's going to be no spillage because there's a berm along the north
correct.
boundary.
And that's what I wanted to show this. We're illustrating the berm right here, and the buffer would be planted atop the berm. It helps make the buffer taller. The height of this berm hasn't been decided yet, hasn't been engineered, but typically they're at least 2 feet, could be 3 feet or more, depending on how the drainage calculations work out. This is an interceptor drainage swale, and this would be the sort of the west boundary, and this would take the water north around the indigenous preserve area into the pond.
Okay, thank you.
This is on this area. This is the side adjacent Carriage Village.
East side.
The east side, the northeast, yeah, the east boundary, where we have an indigenous preserve planned as part of that buffer. This drainage would be brought back into the site. This is the only thing that would be, this area here would just stay like it is today. The drainage for all the developed area would be brought back into the site. Again, we would be getting permits from the Water Management District, from FDOT for drainage, FDOT for access, FDOT for utilities, Lee County Development Order permits. You know, all the standard stuff. Trying to think if there's anything else I can fill you in on the site design. Part of the site design, and Alexis alluded to this earlier, you know, we've tried to concentrate the buildings in the middle of the site. Part of that also has to do with fire protection. So it allows emergency vehicles to get all the way around the buildings through the project. And due to the height of these buildings, it's most likely that these buildings would be would have fire suppression systems built into them because of the height. Usually something over 2 stories typically is sprinklered. And again, because it's multifamily as well. I think that's it for my portion at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'm ready for the next witness.
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Church Roberts, for the record. Did they need a copy of my resume?
Yes, please.
I have been approved as an expert witness here before. Here's a copy of my resume.
Thank you. This will be applicant exhibit 5.
And I've been an environmental consultant in Fort Myers, Southwest Florida area for 29 years this coming August. For 23 of those years, I worked at Johnson Engineering, where I was the director of their environmental department for 16 years. And for the last 6 years, I've been out on my own. I did the work on this property. That work consisted of the habitat mapping, the listed species survey, and the native tree survey. And during the listed species survey, I identified, I believe it was 15 gopher tortoise burrows, which are identified on that map with the red dots. And we identified some coontie plants, which I think are on a different slide. When you do the protected species survey, you estimate the area coverage by, you walk a transect, you take the length of that transect, and then you estimate how many feet you can see on either side, and that gives you an area. So for the county, they require 80% coverage of all suitable habitats. For comparison, if you were in a incorporated area within the county, you would only have to meet the standard requirements by the Fish and Wildlife Commission, which is only 15%. So there's a much more stringent survey cover area by the county. As I said, I also did the native tree survey on the property, so I am 100% certain I covered the minimum 80% of the survey area required.
Okay, so if we could just clarify, that means you were on site and you walked the length of it and you looked on either side and then you walked over a few steps and walked down again, looked on either side, and basically did that for the whole site?
That's correct. And the transects walked are illustrated on the report that was provided to the county.
Right. I'm trying to explain for the public how the project was examined for environmental issues. That's why I'm asking you to clarify.
Yes, you're correct. I walked transects.
I'm very familiar with the staff report, but they are not.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so with regards to the management plan for the gopher tortoises, because there's not enough or sufficient carrying capacity on site, the tortoises would be relocated and moved off site. And so how that works is 90 days prior to development occurring, you have to do a resurvey, which is 100% resurvey the entire area. You submit that to the Fish and Wildlife Commission. You get a relocation permit, and then you relocate the gopher tortoises to an off-site certified recipient site. So there will be no harm at the end of the day to the gopher tortoises.
Okay, so will any of the gopher tortoises remain on site?
Unless there's tortoises on the adjacent lots, all the tortoises within the property will be moved off-site.
Okay.
Those within the development areas and the preserve areas.
Okay, thank you. And then what type of site is it relocated to?
It's a permitted approved recipient site by the Fish and Wildlife Commission. And that's based on availability at the time when you go to actually need to relocate the gopher tortoises. And there's a fee associated with that. And that fee has gotten really high. And so when I started in this business down here, you wouldn't have to pay anything. Or you would pay a fee, but not to relocate them. You would just pay an incidental take fee. Now you're paying up to $6,000 a gopher tortoise just to move them to that approved recipient site.
What does that truck even look like that takes these over? Just wondering.
Just a basic vehicle. So that's the gopher tortoises. Do you have any other questions on the gopher tortoises? And then we did do a detailed habitat map of the property, the edge of the property. And which one of these is the pointer?
That will advance to your cookie.
Okay. So along the edges of the property over in here, it's disturbed habitat. You have a lot of escaped ornamentals from the landscaping yards. Some of that is beneficial to gopher tortoises. You get the grasses, the bahia grass and stuff like that the tortoises feed on. But much of the property is also infested with Brazilian pepper. There was talk about this area. That area is largely Brazilian pepper that will be planted and restored. And then the area that is less exotics up in this area here is your 1.7 acre area that will serve as your indigenous preserve. And then this map just here just shows where the coontie is located.
Where the what is?
Coontie, right here, the plants. And there's actually coontie over in here, so somebody who lives over here plants it, 'cause I saw it over there too.
Okay.
But anyway, so the
What is coontie? Explain what that is and why we're talking about it.
So coontie is a plant. It's listed as protected by Lee County. And so when we go due to the development, in this case, it will be easily relocated into the preserve area. Did that answer that question?
It's a small shrub, right?
Yeah, shrub plant. It's a small evergreen type plant.
Okay. So it'll be preserved, it's not going to be leveled, it'll be moved into your open space area.
Yes, those relocate very well, yeah. And then I think that's it on my slides.
There's another one that shows.
Okay. Oh, this is the tree survey that I did with help with one of Tim Keene's folks. And so this purpose of this survey is a native tree survey. All those dots represent trees with either a minimum of 4-inch DBH, diameter at breast height, for the tree size. And then the DBH, a 20-inch DBH, is your heritage tree survey requirement. So the triangular areas would be heritage trees, I think we had oaks and pines that qualified as heritage trees on the site.
Okay, so can you explain which ones will be preserved as part of the site plan?
Well, the example given was on this border over in here where it showed that pine tree. And so you can see the red dots are all your pine trees. So that's how it fill into that buffer, you know, when you get that line of sight view where you have the existing pine trees.
Okay, and what's going to happen with the heritage live oak and laurel oak and pines?
Well, they're going to be preserved to the extent practicable. They can be relocated, like we'll probably relocate a lot of the cabbage palms on the property to the extent practicable. And if not, then you offset the taking of that tree with the replanting.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Ted Shreesh with TR Transportation Consultants. We did the transportation analysis as part of this rezoning application. And for the benefit of the public, I'll go into a little more explanation than I typically do for this process. But we look at the Institute of Transportation Engineers report, which is a compilation of a number of surveys collected all over the country for this type of land use. For this specific land use, it was a multifamily land use category, which for this project is a multi-story product. Typically a multifamily project, as I testified in this forum yesterday, a multifamily product generates less traffic than a single family home, because a single family home typically has more vehicles, more residences, more people living in a single family home than a multifamily use. So a multifamily product generates generally about half the amount of traffic that a single family use generates.
And this is based on surveys that are the source of this published information in this manual?
Yes.
And you rely on this manual to estimate the trips that will be generated by this project?
Yes, and that manual is accepted methodologies that's accepted and required for us to use, that's required for us to use by the county, by FDOT, and required by the Administrative Code and the Land Development Code here in Lee County. So it's generally accepted practices here in the state of Florida, Lee County, and all over the country. So these practices are well practiced throughout the state of Florida and the United States. So the methodologies are practiced here in the county, and the study was reviewed by staff and accepted by staff, and there is a memo that is part of the staff report that Lee County staff produced that summarizes the results of our analysis. We're in agreement with those comments that are made in the staff report that summarizes the conclusions that are included in our traffic study. But basically, the analysis indicates that there's sufficient capacity on the roadway to accommodate our project. As you are aware, Lee County no longer has transportation concurrency in the county, so the level of service is more for informational purposes, but the roadway will operate at an acceptable level of service at build out of this project. Bayshore Road is a state roadway, as you're aware, so we did meet with the Florida Department of Transportation at the very onset of this project to talk about access and the location of access. As Alexa said, even though the county requires 2 points of access for this size of project, because of the state access regulations, they would only permit us to have one point of ingress and egress to this access because of their access management restrictions on this corridor. And so that access location was selected about midpoint of this project, where it's shown on the master concept plan. And Mr. Keene indicated that in his testimony that Bayshore doesn't have a median. What he indicated is it doesn't have a raised median. There's no raised island on Bayshore. It does have a median, but it's, as you can see in the photograph, it's just a center median used for a center turn lane on Bayshore, although FDOT is currently, I believe they put it up for bid recently. They are coming through with an access management project to install a raised median on Bayshore through this section to restrict access at certain locations. So there will be restrictions. We're not quite sure. They haven't designed it yet. So there will be restrictions at these driveways in the near future. We're not quite sure where the left turns will be permitted and not permitted. So we could have a right in, right out at this location, or we could have left turns, but we're still working with FDOT, and that'll be worked out as we move forward in the design and development order process.
So until this improvement is installed, the access allows for all turning movement?
Correct.
Mr. Treese, let me ask you a couple questions. Does the county have a land development code or administrative code requirement that tells you how to do your zoning analysis?
Yes.
And the staff agreed that your analysis was done in conformance with the regulations.
Yes.
And you mentioned ITE, and that is, as you indicated, a standard that's accepted everywhere in the country.
Yes.
And when you do the analysis, everybody always worries that we're getting more and more people that move here and we're not taking them into account. When you do your analysis, do you consider the background traffic, what's there now, as well as what's going to come before your project built out?
Yes, one of the things we do is we look at the project traffic, we look at the volumes on Bayshore as they exist today, we look at the trip generation of this project, and then we increase the traffic on Bayshore Road based on historical growth patterns, and then we estimate based on the build-out year. And I believe for this project, we looked at 2025 projections based on historical growth rates and looked at the build-out year at 2025 conditions. So we looked at it. We looked at a future build-out year, not just at current conditions.
And when you go to pull a development order for the project, will you have to, again, do a traffic analysis that follows the county rules to look at the impacts?
That's correct. At the time of development order, we'll have to do an additional traffic studies for both Lee County and FDOT for both the Lee County development order application and the FDOT access connection permit application.
And when FDOT looks at your analysis, when you go to get your right-of-way permit, are they going to look at the turning movements and dictate what kind of turn lanes are needed?
Yes, at the time of the FDOT permit application, we'll determine if a right turn lane will be needed at the driveway access location. And again, working with DOT with their current project, if a left turn lane, if they're going to install median, a raised median, if we can provide a left turn lane, if one's not going to be provided in the current construction project.
And when they look at the turn lane, the length of that turn lane, is that the length they believe is necessary to provide for public safety?
That's correct.
And when they look at your access points and your turn lanes, are they mindful of other people's access and not creating problems for their access?
Yes, that's correct.
So we know that there's a lot of folks here from the mobile home park who are concerned that somehow this access is going to hurt theirs. I'm sorry, ma'am. Did you catch that question before I was interrupted?
Yes, FDOT is continually evaluating their system, and when a project comes in, they look at everything, how it impacts their system and access, and how it impacts their roadway and access drives upstream and downstream.
Because their number one priority isn't our access, their number one priority is public safety.
Public safety and their roadway network, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, move. I think I have one more.
Try now.
I have another one? Was that it?
Yep.
I think that was it. Do you have any other questions for
Can
me?
you advance the slide for them?
Yeah,
Going backwards.
it was back.
There we
Yeah,
go.
that was me. That's all for me, unless you had any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll be here to hear the questions of the public?
Yes, I will.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I just want to tell
I think we
everyone.
ran this out of battery yesterday. We had
Maybe. That's-
quite a crowd.
I just want to let everyone know that we have to conclude the hearing today at noon because another hearing is scheduled at 1. If you don't get an opportunity to speak today, you will get an opportunity to speak on the continued hearing day. If you have an issue and you won't be here on the continued hearing day, speak among your neighbors because I'm going to go in the order I have these sheets. But if some of you can only speak today and on no other occasion, maybe you can work it out with your neighbors here so that those of you who cannot return can speak first. Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you. And we're almost done. We just have 3 more slides, so thank
Great.
everyone for their patience.
Take your time.
I neglected to tenure myself as an expert in land use planning, lead plan compliance, land development code. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So to close out our presentation, we wanted to just tie all these facts and information together and discuss how this project is consistent with your lead plan as well as the criteria in your land development code, not only for residential plan development zonings, but also the bonus density we're seeking. First and foremost, we are subject to policy 1.1.3, which is your central urban future land use category. This category encourages redevelopment, infill redevelopment like this. It encourages a variety of housing types, including multifamily. It allows for up to 20 units per acre explicitly through bonus density and the Greater Pine Island TDU program to direct growth where it should be, where you have urban services, and protect other areas of the county that should not be developed as intensely. That goes along with Objective 2.2 and the underlying policies on that area of the lead plan. Talks about smart growth, timing of development, and ensuring the infrastructure is available. As the experts have outlined, the project connects to existing water and sewer, or will connect to water and sewer facilities. There is capacity on the roadway to serve the project. We abut a transit corridor with a transit stop that we will enhance for the use of our residents. There are schools, EMS, fire, the North Fort Myers Regional Park facility. So we are right in that urban core and have all the necessary services available to us to provide for the proposed density being requested. This is also in compliance with standard 4.1 and 4.2 related to centralized utilities for higher density projects. Policy 5.1.3 is an explicit policy about when you go to the higher end of your density range in a future land use category. And it states that you should locate that in your employment centers and really focuses on availability of infrastructure to serve the proposed density and only allow that multifamily higher density where that exists. And certainly our application materials and testimony today demonstrates consistency with that policy. Probably the most important when you're doing infill development and when you have a mix of single family and mobile home lots around you is policy 5.1.5. And that's about neighborhood compatibility. When you come in with a new project, you need to be compatible with your neighbors. The LEED plan defines compatibility not as the same land uses, meaning you have to put single family next to existing single family. It doesn't say that. It says whatever you do put next to an existing development, existing homes, you need to make sure you're not communicating negative impacts to that property owner. That means visual impact of a large building towering over their single-story structure. That could mean noise, light, all the different impacts that development can bring. Certainly, when looking at the commercial uses that could go on this property, residential is much more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood just inherently through similar land uses. This property fronts on an arterial roadway, so it will just inherently be developed at a density or intensity that is greater than surrounding single-family uses because that road has grown over time, is proposed for further improvements, and this general area has expanded into an urbanized area of the county. So what we've described to you is how we will mitigate and prevent negative impacts to our neighbors. First and foremost, the significant setback of those buildings to a 1 foot of setback per building height so that these units are well within the property and the views of the neighbors from their backyards will be of vegetation and, as Josh showed, barely the roof line of these structures. If a single family home was built to the current RS1 zoning in these areas, they would have a pool cage within only a few feet from their property line and all the noise impacts and visual impacts that would go along with that, because a buffer would not be required if we were developing single-family homes. So what we've proposed is buffering that will screen visual impact, it will screen any lighting within our parking areas. We don't have an amenity facility that would generate noise impacts. All of our traffic is being routed to State Road 80, so certainly not routing traffic through any of these surrounding residential areas. And all combined, this produces consistency with policy 5.1.5. We're also consistent with the North Fort Myers community plan policies outlined in Objective 30 of the LEAP plan. A couple items of note is locating additional housing options in this community. They did have a early development previous to the LEAP plan at lower densities, and with emerging corridors and redevelopment along US 41, they are looking to increase the diversity of housing, and this project will certainly do that. It also talks about locating these types of housing near their neighborhood centers, which this is within 600 feet of a designated neighborhood center oriented towards the 41 intersection with Bayshore. And then the last policies we've cited in Objective 123 there, and we also have additional policies in our narrative as well as in the staff report. We won't belabor all of them, but the site does meet all of the policies related to environmental protection. That's relocating the gopher tortoises in compliance with state standards, on-site indigenous preservation, water quality pretreatment through our stormwater management system, and 45% open space above and beyond the 40% required. The application is consistent with your land development code criteria as well, Chapter 34-145 D4A1. As just noted, the application is fully compliant with your LEAD plan. We are in agreement with your staff on this item. We have sought 4 deviations. We also have recommendation for approval and explain those today, how they will not be a detriment to public safety and welfare, and have been reviewed not only by Lee County staff, but the Sheriff's Office and Fire Department where applicable. Through our buffers, enhanced setbacks, we will be compatible with the existing uses surrounding the site. We have sufficient access to support the proposed development, and as Ted noted, there's an acceptable level of service on the roadways to support the 180 units. We will not adversely impact environmental resources, and we are well within that urban defined area per the LEAD plan. Lastly, under bonus density, there's 5 criteria for a seeking bonus density that you must meet. First and foremost is you've got to use the program, either affordable housing, which we heard loud and clear the community did not want, and we are seeking the Pine Island TDR bonus density through this application, which is consistent with item A in this code section. This is infill residential with adequate public facilities and infrastructure, and with conditions in place to ensure compatibility. We are not requesting assisted living facilities, which are precluded from bonus density. We are not on a coastal island or barrier island, and furthermore are using a system that will protect those lands on coastal islands. And similarly, we are not within a coastal hazard area, which would be an inappropriate place to locate increased density. So to summarize, we are in agreement with your staff on their recommendation of approval with conditions. We have no proposed changes to any of those conditions. We've outlined for you today, this is a compact infill project. We've worked hard on the site plan to ensure compatibility with our neighbors through the different design parameters. We've demonstrated urban services are available to serve the project, and we are consistent with your LEED plan as well as your land development code. With that, I will respond to any questions you may have.
Yes, I have a few questions. Regarding the proposed height, which is a maximum of 65, I understand that you may not go that high, but you have the option of going that high. Have you surveyed the heights of buildings in the general area? And are there other buildings in the area that are constructed at that height?
We are seeking 60 feet as opposed to 65. I would like to review my notes and then address that at rebuttal if possible.
Okay. My next excuse me, please, if we can be civil and allow the presentation to go forward without interruption. My other question is, have you surveyed North Fort Myers regarding whether there's any similar offerings of this type of housing, multi-story, multifamily housing in the North Fort Myers community? To your point of this is expanding options in the community for different residential types. Have you surveyed the community to see if there's any similar offerings like this?
I can speak to two specific multifamily projects that are coming online in the area. They're infill redevelopment. One is redevelopment at Merchants Crossing. I believe that's under construction, if not fully constructed, of multifamily units on a portion of that previously commercial use area. And our office is also working on a multifamily project at Hancock Bridge Parkway and US 41.
And what are the proposed heights on those projects?
I will need to review that and
Okay, if you can get back to me on that. And then, did you do a survey of density on the surrounding residential properties, north and south of Bayshore Road?
we did not. And
Okay, I am interested in that. If you need time, you can handle it during your rebuttal. And can you tell me roughly when the surrounding residential communities were developed?
I might defer that to Tim Keene, I believe in the 1970s.
Okay, if there's another witness that's more able to speak to that with personal knowledge, I'd be interested in knowing that. Because that character of that road corridor has changed over time, and I think there is some relevance to when the surrounding communities were constructed relative to the state of that roadway and whether single-family product is suitable for that property. Okay, those are all the questions I have. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to resume the hearing with staff's presentation. Staff's presentation may involve one or more witnesses. When they have completed their presentation and responded to any questions I may have or the applicant's staff may have, we will open up the floor to public input. Thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break.
I can probably find that pretty quick.
I don't remember.
And I think we did the height.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to come at it if you can get to the last question.
I came in late because I was at the wrong building.
These were built in the 60s, 70s, and Bayshore.
They sent me to the wrong building.
Does
I need to turn that
with the little two-lane road.
Thank you so much.
It's single family appropriate anymore in that location in RS1. Yeah, I know we did the height analysis and it wasn't good, but I agree that's the way to.
Papers around. She went up there and folded her paper and put it on top. Shauna just went and put her paper up. That's 10 minutes. Fold her paper and put it on top. I put two on. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just because.
Put that one back on the bottom. Which one? Oh, really? Where did you graduate there? 79? I don't know. Because I'm an 83, but I see my wife and I see a lot of the same people. Yeah.
Now there isn't on the road.
Applicants probably.
Crazy. I mean, now
There's two-story multifamily.
I never heard of them.
We send it to them.
And it's really not that different.
Well,
Oh, yeah?
I will. I was gonna look, they mentioned Gary, this guy right here.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully Sharam says okay. I said, hope Sharam says okay. Come on, Sharam. You guys need me or?
Should we tell her we had a community meeting? And don't he come up?
She didn't have it, that we were kind of. Started doing that. They're handing around. One of the issues was when you called them. They had time to kill some using it for that housing bill. So we'll see what it still was, but it was
Okay, all right, well, so much for that idea.
if it's the one that I'm thinking.
Yeah, I haven't.
Everybody was praying by around there. Yeah. You know, one summer I was instructing.
It's not applicable here, that's the problem.
I asked a guy, I said,
Could be
I think it's a
something
trend.
from 80
Trend.
years ago.
Back in 1973, I was in the air traffic control tower. Something came and hovered over the runway. So I couldn't get on the air traffic control station of the UFO because I lose my job. He said we all went down there, we looked at it, and it hovered off. So they just declassified the UFO file. You can now read about that. Yeah. As a kid growing up, you hear the sonic booms and stuff like that. Testing and stuff.
I went to the University of Florida. When I was up there, I was
Yeah, that was like, I think that's that lady was with her face
Oh, there.
Oh,
right in front of me.
yeah, it was weird. I've never seen anybody do that.
So this is us, okay? You turn here, right here.
Right there.
Right here. There's a ton of them. It's like a,
That's what I've got my pictures.
there's a frickin' condo association back there.
I know. Right in here, when I was walking the last few times, I was way in here. I came
No.
from, here's me right there, 156. I walked all the way through, like, I got all the way out to here. Then I went back over this way, then I ended up coming out here over by Al's, and Al's right up here. But I went all the way down here behind, Shauna's. Shauna's right about here. I was through all of this in here. There's hundreds. So I was
Can I get the rebuttal today?
No. I hope not, because I don't have enough time to do all that.
I know, that's what, wow, I was thinking,
We can just say we don't have enough time, we'll come back.
And there, I mean, you're all.
There's too many of them. I don't see any way we can.
I would say, so if you
That's wild now, it's like technology. So you can, as opposed to a radio.
In my opinion, the developers that I'm working with now, 80 of them are going to be one.
That's a huge stack over there. There's at least 20.
So like I've done that in
The one bedroom will be around 700 something.
yeah,
Two bedroom,
fly a drone over that.
150,000 square feet.
It's just, you have to go back and smooth the process. But still, it's so much.
The biggest demand is
You're taking pictures and then going back and coming.
She gave me
So I think your exercise was showing all 1,200 square feet, right?
Yeah, but you gotta discount, we're at the external wall, we haven't accounted for stairwells or
Make a practical matter when more than five used to just be only mobile homes.
I think that's what the mix is going.
Merchants Crossing is not far, and what do we do next?
Well, I think
Dan McNabbit.
no matter what how it is, it's a sign of what for good housing, modernizing.
Multifamily is 50 feet at Merchant Street. Oh, like.
Right.
And Dan's
It will sell for the same price. People are buying X amount per door.
Where are we in our order?
And if we only get approved
Yeah, I wanted him to be right up there.
That's my go-to. Coco Blonde. So when you stop, is it a landscape architect or it's a landscape architect degree. You doing okay?
Did you see that? It looks like it's
Okay.
But when I read it,
Yeah.
like Naples City, I read it in questions at the end about the height of other projects.
I think we did a lot.
I read the blurb.
It doesn't look very good. The numbers don't look really good, but we have to make the case that it's changed since that was done. But I've got a couple of projects in the area that I'm trying to get data on.
So I thought I gotta read it when.
Right.
You can scratch me and said because we will be here the 5th of May, but I didn't have a ride home, and I want to go to Louis' funeral, but now I do.
Okay.
So.
Did he want to speak? Oh, yes.
So we're leaving at 11:30, so we can make it.
I don't see him. It worries me that Willa was over talking to him. Willa?
Yeah, probably didn't.
Maybe let's do the fast right now. I don't know. It worries me.
Are you still on the Richland call? Did you hear her questions or no? Probably not. Okay, she was like, have you done an inventory of surrounding building heights? Have you done an inventory of surrounding densities? And I believe we did look at some of that information. I don't know if you can just look through your files. I'm gonna try to do that, and then I might have you look at the PDs near us that are on your exhibit and see if we can get any info easily, quick, because when you use LIPA and you just pull the DRI or the PD layer, you can easily like grab the resolution and see like the height. So that's another thing. But if you can just look through the files, I gotta get back to my now, but she's.
We're getting ready to begin. If everybody could take their seats. We're getting ready to begin.
Noon.
Take your seats.
Noon.
You can see that vegetation and the water line?
There's no like.
Okay.
There's no like ponded areas. There's no.
Okay, that's good to know.
There's no.
How tall is the co-op?
That's got to be a several-story building. Yeah.
I got it.
I don't know.
Okay, we're back on the record. We're ready to begin with the staff presentation of their staff report.
Right across the street, more or less.
How tall is LCEC building?
Good morning. Sharon Badamchian from Lee County Zoning. My resume is on file. I was recognized as expert in zoning issues. Thank you. Well, the request is to rezone 9 acres from RS1 and C1 to RPD. Part of the request is to add 89 bonus density units. The underlying land use designation of the site is central urban. They are entitled to up to 10 dwelling units per acre, which amounts to 91 units. They are asking to 180 units. Basically, they are asking 89 additional units through not affordable housing, through bonus density unit plan. We have requirements for that. Land Development Section 2-147 has a set of criteria. The only one that they may have some issue, or there may be some concern, is the one that says the resulting development will be compatible with existing and planned surrounding uses. Technically, surrounding uses are residential. Residential is considered compatible with residential. The issue comes down to height of the buildings. Number of units, yes, they are going to be high, but one of the criterion here, actually number one, it says that the additional traffic is not going to go through other neighborhoods, which in this case it will not. It will go directly to Bayshore. Well, the issue of the height was brought up at the beginning of our review. And the way we try to resolve it, since they want that many units, is to push everything to the center to have larger setbacks, to make it less visible, less intrusive to the neighbors. Their setback, the proposed setback was 20 feet. We doubled that to 40. And this morning I hear that they are willing to increase it to 60. And about the density, like the development that surrounds it on the west and north side, they are about 10 dwelling units per acre. But that's an older development, and LEAP plan has certain requirements, and LEAP plan encourages higher density in the central urban area. And the other issue we had was with the access being upward, being like real close to someone's property. But unfortunately, we have no say on that. It's a state requirement, state road, and they decide where they're gonna grant the access point. So they ask for 4 deviations. Staff recommends approval of those deviations subject to conditions. We have conditions for each deviation, basically. They are in full compliance with the requirements of the LEAP plan and the Land Development Code. The only concern staff still has is basically the height of the buildings.
I share that concern because at 60 feet, we're talking 5 or 6 stories, correct?
We are talking 4 stories, they are saying. 4 stories. I mean, even a 12-foot ceiling, you could get away with 50, 40 or 45. 60 seems a little bit high for the area. And I understand that they have a larger setbacks, that it is going to help. But nonetheless, if you look around, there's nothing that high.
Yeah, when I did my pre-hearing site check, I specifically had an eye out for that, and I noticed that this would really, be very obvious in this area where everything is basically 1 story.
But on the other hand, in central urban, if you look at the maximum building height, they can go up to, I believe, 125 feet.
So your recommendation is approval. So am I to understand that you balanced all the factors and your conclusion is that you support the 60-foot requested height?
We came to this conclusion that with the additional setbacks, that will not be a detriment to the neighborhood, but still a concern. But staff still recommends approval of this with the additional setbacks as they agreed this morning to increase it to 60 feet.
So you feel comfortable with the additional setbacks and the enhanced buffers, that will ameliorate the height differential from surrounding development?
To a certain extent, we believe it will, yes. I mean, you cannot make a 60-foot building invisible, but it will ameliorate the situation by planting trees and shrubs and providing additional setbacks. Buildings are pushed to the center and all the trees around.
The code does not require the buildings to be invisible. The code
Correct.
just
No, it does not.
requires compatibility with adjacent development. And we are in an urban area where it's not unheard of to be able to see development on adjacent properties. So I just want to zero in on.
Correct. I mean, it's a central urban. It's one of the highest intensity use you can find in the county.
Right, but you also take into account surrounding development in that context, specifically when you're dealing with infill.
Correct. But surrounding properties, tomorrow they can change too. They can change the zoning and get something different. We have to balance existing land use pattern with the future land use designation of the property and the infrastructure that we have. Staff try to come up with something better, but that's the best we could come up with, and staff supports this project with this additional setbacks, the language that you had in the 48-hour notice. It would have been nice if applicant agreed to reduce the height a little bit.
Do you have anything
Just
further?
the wishful thinking.
Do you have anything further?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there
You
any other witnesses on behalf of the county?
You want?
I only have it if the public will need it later.
If you're going to speak, you have to come to the podium. I'm sorry. Yeah, we need your name for the record and
Okay.
Oh, from the beginning.
Okay. Where's the?
Oh, it's right here.
We wandered off with it, sorry.
good
Hi.
morning.
Good morning. My name is Cameron Severson. I have been previously approved as an expert in the Land Development Code for Chapter 10. I'm here this morning to kind of give a brief presentation of the environmental side of this project. If any of the public has any further questions in the future, I'll be able to answer them as best as I can to my ability. Okay, so here's the master concept plan. As Tim Keene and Mr. Church has already given a presentation, they have provided several indigenous areas on site. As you can see, down here, there's an Indigenous Area 1, Indigenous Area 2, Indigenous Area 3, and Indigenous 4. This area right here is a restoration area that they have provided a restoration plan for. Now, they do have environmentally sensitive areas on site, but they have agreed to go for tortoise relocations per FWC regulations. They do have an up-to-date flux map. And with that flux map, the indigenous areas are classified by 10-701 indigenous, and they also have a Florida County map, which they have provided a relocation plan for. Now, for multifamily residential developments, they are required to provide 40% open space. The applicant is actually providing 45, which is 4.09 acres. The code requires half of the required open space as indigenous. They have requested a deviation for it. 1.83 acres or 20% is required. The applicant is actually utilizing credits and providing 1.76 acres, which is 19%. So they're pretty close to their indigenous open space requirement, and I have provided a breakdown here with the credits. The environmental science landscaping as follows. The north is required to provide a 15-foot type B. The south is required to provide a 15-foot type B, but with the overlay, they actually are providing a 20-foot type D as conditioned. The east is required to provide a 15-foot type D, or B, sorry. They are providing a 30-foot type F, where roads and parking are within 125 feet, which is following the code requirements. And to the west, they are also providing the 15-foot type B requirement as a 30-foot type F, which is where the 125-foot rule comes into play. The only area that they are requesting a deviation for is that FDOT area, which I have blown up here on the PowerPoint. Although they're not able to meet the minimum landscaping for that area from the code, staff has proposed a condition to maintain shrub height at 72 inches instead of the normal 60. This will provide some screening to the residents and follow the 5.1.5 policy in the Lee plan. The proposed conditions are as follows. Provide a county management plan at time of development services. Provide a restoration plan for Indigenous Area 1, which they have agreed to. Provide an 8-foot solid wall with shrubs installed at 48 inches and maintained at 72. And that is with demonstration to policy 5.1.5, and to provide a 25-foot type D buffer along the Bayshore Road. Even though that's required, we're just installing it as a condition so no further changes can occur. And that's all I have to add to that presentation.
Thank you. Do you have an extra copy of that PowerPoint so that I have an exhibit?
No, I can get it to you though.
Okay, please do. Are there any other witnesses on behalf of Lee County staff? No. Okay. I am going to open up the floor to public input. A few words. I ask that there be no clapping and no jeering. Let each person say their piece. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak once. You may speak as long as you like. But remember, once you're at the board, when you speak to them, you will be limited to 3 minutes. So when you get to the board hearing, you want to make sure you're just hitting the bullets of your concerns. Here, you can speak as long as you like. Please, if you have questions, ask them. I will tell you what our protocol is regarding questions. We take in all the questions, particularly when we have a large group like this, because oftentimes there's repetition in the type of question. We take in all the questions, and then when we close public input and go back to the parties, they will then respond to the questions that were raised by members of the public. Okay? I think that's everything. So I'm going to start with these papers. Once again, I'm going to say I must conclude this hearing at noon because we have another hearing scheduled for this afternoon, and we need time to clean the room and get it ready for the next hearing. We have provided alternate dates to the parties. I'm hoping they've had an opportunity to review that. Can we turn to that just for a minute and see if we can identify one or more dates that works for both?
We had identified the 5th. That didn't work?
5th, fine. Fine.
Fine, okay, so I know the other 2 dates weren't any good, so I asked my staff to provide others. So we're all good with the 5th? Yes. Okay. Members of the public, this hearing will likely resume on the 5th. If we have not concluded public input, I will continue to take public input on that day. At the conclusion of public input, we'll resume with the parties. They will respond to questions, clarify any issues that were raised, and then they'll move to their closing remarks. Okay, first person, Richard Hampton. Would you please state your full name for the record?
Richard Hampton, 385 Santa Fe Trail. First, I have a background in construction and worked for DuPont for 10 years in their engineering department. Got a couple concerns. First, the word bonus density, if for clarification, that just means they're trying to double what the actual requirement is for land use. Is that correct?
Right. In certain land use categories, they have ranges for how much density you can have, including bonus density, but you have to actually request the bonus density to achieve the maximum that could be permitted in the category.
One of my first concerns is the egress into the development. They stating that it would possibly be a gated community of some degree. We at our park have had discussions about doing a gated community, and with the stacking requirements we were told, I didn't see their plan for stacking of cars going in and out. In addition to, if there was a larger truck that entered that, no way for them to get out once they were in there in the plan that was shown. So we're not going to get answers at this time. We're just giving you
Posing questions, and the parties are making notes of these questions, and then we'll circle back and respond.
One of the other things, at the pinch point where they're going to be coming into the development, their parking design.
Can we bring up the master concept plan for this gentleman?
I really liked your, we could see yours, we couldn't see the overall plan, so if she brings hers up, it gives us a little bit more detail.
That's not
Store and go here.
F.
And then Bayshore. It's the second one.
Second.
Skip sign. Second.
This?
Yep.
That'll work. Where we're coming into this development and you're making a left turn to be stacked up there, one thing on the developments that I have done before, especially when you're building a multi-story unit like this, we always had to go to our local fire departments for the length of our ladder trucks and what would be able to get into the development. And I can assure you at this plan, a ladder truck would have a difficult time to service a fire on a 4-story building. And we're talking, that has to be addressed. One thing that wasn't discussed was on a new development here in Lee County, the elevation of the property where they're going to construct a new building. That elevation for our flood zones is going to be raised. So instead of being 60 foot, it could be 65 or 68. We have yet to know what the elevation change on this property would be. And when you're talking about not messing the berm up with the growth that's there in the trees, that will impact the future growth of these indigenous products that are there. So would need to know how much that elevation will be changed before they started the construction to give you what you were asking about height and the concern that the board had about the overall height of a new 4-story structure. We had a discussion from the transportation person about the number of vehicles egressing this property or turns, and I know he used some standards that he went by. What he failed to inform us was if you have single residents and they're doing a number of what they call turns in and out every day, 3 or 4 times, yes, a multi unit like this has less turns, but the overall number of vehicles in a complex with this number of units increases the amount of traffic. It doesn't decrease. You have to take in consideration in the small area with this many residents. So that number he gave us is kind of shaded. And we do have a member in our community that could address this a lot better than me. He is an expert on transportation and means, and hopefully he'll have an opportunity to address that. That summarizes some of my first concerns being a resident close to this area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming today. Morgan Hess.
My name is Morgan Hess. I live at 114 Conestoga Trail in Carriage Village. And the basic thing I want to address is, or have questions on, the gentleman with the transportation department was talking about a left turn lane into this new piece of property. We had a discussion, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, with the Department of Transportation discussing the modifications that they're going to be doing on Bayshore Road. And basically, they're just going to have 2 turn lanes, and we will, in our community, not have a turn lane. We will have to go all the way up to Hart Road, make a U-turn to come back down into our community, which in our way of looking at it would be the same reason that Rich just said about emergency vehicles. Since we will not have a turn lane to go into our community, which we have 396 units in there, and you're talking about 180 units in this small piece of property. So we have almost twice the amount of automobiles going into our property as what's going to be going into this new piece of property. And in order for us to get into our community, like I said, we have to go all the way up to Hart Road, make a U-turn, and this is what we were told, to come back down to get into our community. The study that the Department of Transportation had for the presentation that they gave to us 2 weeks ago was from 2015 to 2019. And the gentleman was here was saying he took a survey that projected it to be, the traffic to be 2025, I believe. And the traffic right now, compared to what they did in 2015 to 2019, there is no comparison. I have pictures on my phone right now at 4:45 or 4:45 of an evening where the traffic turning left onto Hart Road or trying to get into our community was backed up all the way to Evelina Street. So the amount of traffic that's going to be added when you add these units is just going to be phenomenal. It's not even going to be close to what it is right now. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ross Lackman. Please share with me how I butchered your name.
Russell Lockman, 156 Santa Fe Trail, and I apologize because I'm not fancy, technical, or whatever. I'm a resident there in Carriage Village, and I have to dispute the environmental study first off. I agree with Morgan on his bit there with the traffic coming in and out. It is absolutely crazy. Where that gentleman got that picture of Bayshore with 3 cars on it, I don't know what planet he got that from. I have some photos here regarding the 15 tortoise mounds. These pictures were taken, I have 11 photos here. These pictures are taken between 150 feet from Tim Michelle's and Gary Griffin's, our backyards, into the preserve. These are all active. I've had as many as 5 at one time in my yard. Gary's had 4. There's numerous. I have, go to this picture. The other one here was just all the vegetation. I did not walk tracks. What I'd like to show you is what I did, okay? Can you go put that other screen back up?
They're working on it. They're working on it.
Here, I'll give you these.
Okay, this is Lockman Composite Exhibit 1. We'll make copies of this for the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, a lot of the guys, people here know me. I have 2 cats, and one of them likes to get away. I'm here at 156. I've walked this from here through here, almost to Bayshore. I've walked it to here, not little 2-foot sections. I've walked it all the way over here. There's a lot more than 15 mounds within that. I guarantee you that. The pictures there will show it. If somebody wants to walk in there with me, I'll take them around. But you better wear long pants and a sweatshirt and everything else, and you're still going to get cut up. But that's that part. But as with the road safety, if you physically would walk just the sidewalk from Evelina to Hart and look out into the street on Bayshore, it's nothing but brake marks. There's car pieces laying all over the place, and constantly, at least once, I'd say once a day at Hart, there's a wreck there every day. And right in front of our village, the main, which we still have an entrance right now. There's wrecks there once a week, right in front of the village, constantly. And you got Del Webb coming in from the east, and you want to put all these other units in here right next to us? It's basically a death trap. That's the way I put it. That's it.
Thank you. Alice Lockman?
He spoke for me, so.
Okay, thank you. Daniel and Abnett?
Oh, that was good. You did a good job. You get a passing grade for that. Daniel and Abnett. I live 234 Santa Fe Trail. Just moved there. We lost our place in South Fort Myers, so we're enjoying it up here, not being flooded. Richard Hampton alluded to me being a traffic expert. I don't know if I'm an expert. I don't know if anybody's expert anymore after COVID hit, because traffic just changed a whole lot. But that's my main concern, is the traffic on Bayshore Drive. Florida DOT says that the ADT for the average daily traffic for that road is 38,500. I don't know. I would like to. It said that count was in 2021. Don't know. It seems like to me it's a whole lot more than that. With the left turn that Mr. Hess was alluding to, that's what we won't be able to make left turns. Neither will this development. They're not going to be able to make left turns. There's going to be a unmountable median all the way down through there. Everyone's going to have to go down, including the people from the new development, down to Hart Road and make a U-turn and go back. So that doubles everybody that goes on Bayshore. That's going to double the traffic for everybody that's turning left into that unit. That's all I got.
Thank you. Just let me know if you have any questions. Dan Pence. Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. Thanks for letting me be here. I get thrown out a lot. My name is Dan Pence. I'm at 212 Santa Fe Trail. We hear a lot about the traffic, and now we've got the turtles. My concerns is the utilities. Lee County has got a history, if we look at Cape Coral, and allowing zone changes and construction in areas where utilities haven't been updated to meet those requirements. And we have on the news all the time, I'm not an expert, I don't have anything in writing, but we hear all the time about people in Cape Coral not having any water pressure, their electrical is failing all the time, and it's just, in the sewage, they don't have the proper size equipment and stuff to get rid of the sewage. And if you look at the area, how condensed the houses and everything are, and you add to it another 180 units, I'm afraid, in my opinion anyway, that we're going to have the same issues in our area as they have in Cape Coral. They're going to put all these houses on the city water and the sewer and the electric, and we're going to have issues all over. And I think it's something that needs to be considered. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Victoria Adams. Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for moving things along so we get to speak a little bit. I'm Victoria Adams. I live at 150 Chisholm. I am the president of the board of directors of Carriage Village. Our village is extremely concerned about the traffic. We went to PennDOT, we talked to them. We didn't get any indication that they were going to change their plan. I don't know when you did your stuff. I know their traffic studies are out of date. 2020, which is what I think he said, was COVID. How many cars did you have on the road in COVID? Certainly not what you've got now. People are happy to be out and about. and they are doing it. Our traffic is terrible. We actually paid over $30,000 to open a back gate so that we could make a left, a right hand only, I do it all the time, and go out Hart Road to turn, because you could sit in our driveway for 15 minutes trying to make a left. So we've spent a lot of money trying to help that. Now they're coming in with a solid medium where we can't get in. We have trash trucks that come in. We have fire trucks that come in. Unfortunately, we're 55 plus. We have a lot of ambulances. If they start backing up there, it's never going to work. When we have, and they're talking about a bus stop, and I'm confused about that because there is one by our entrance. And now they're saying there's going to be one by their entrance, I believe, if I took it correctly. I have seen traffic back up from that bus stop with one active, healthy individual climbing on the bus, and traffic has backed up past the stop sign. So you're not talking lightweight traffic. If they did a study that came up with that, it was during COVID, it was not during rush hour, because rush hour has extended from 4 to 3:30 and down. I've been here 19 years, and he's saying predicted studies in 2025. I'll bet you beans we're past there now in 2023. So that's one of the primary concerns. I'm also concerned about the utilities. The houses down from us, they don't have sewer. Why would this one come in and get sewer when people that currently live in the area don't have sewer? We have pump out plants that we have to keep going. And I'm guessing they'll have to have the same. I haven't heard anything about that. It concerns me that they say the engineering on some of the berming and stuff like that isn't completed, because you can't hide a 60-foot building, and you can tell us you're going to do your best, and I do appreciate that, but I think it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. Del Webb is 800 plus units just a little ways up the road. There are 4 or 5 new multi-story structures going in just past, and I'm guessing that's what they're calling Merchants Crossings, but that's a huge development, and that's just down the road from us. There is a limit to, this road can't handle that. It truly can't. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. I didn't think you were going to get to me today. So I truly appreciate being able to speak. We do have a lot of questions about how they're going to try and fit into this. If this was commercial and single family, your density would be ever so much slower. You can say that multifamily usage is less than single family, but not when you're going from a few properties to 181. And I don't understand some of the where they're offsetting things with things in different areas. If you offset your density in our area and you put something someplace else, that's all well and good, but it doesn't help us. We have, as Morgan said, close to 400 units with a lot of people. Every unit has to have one person 55 plus. So, and we've been there for 40 years. We don't want to be crowded out. And a lot of people are saying if the traffic gets that heavy, I don't know what we'll do. And that's the truth. So thank you.
Can I ask a question? You indicated.
Can she ask a question?
Yes, she
Okay.
can. Members of the public can be questioned.
You indicated that you analyzed an alternative access on Hart Road. Did you say that was put in?
We did put it in. We got all the permits. We had a long time. It took us almost a year to get it. It's been in the works for several years. That allows us to exit only on Hart Road, a right-hand turn, exit only onto Hart Road. And the reason we did that is because the traffic on Bayshore is so heavy, we could not make a left. So now you're saying we can't come in, we're going to have to go and make a U-turn. And PennDOT seemed pretty firm on that, and we also argued their traffic studies. COVID traffic versus today's traffic, they don't compare. They don't compute, they shouldn't be used.
Okay, so that was FDOT study you're talking about, though.
I'm talking about the FDOT study, which will definitely affect your development. They're only proposing 2 points. They call them conflict points, so they're trying to reduce. And your expertise, he knows better than I do, but they're only proposing 2 spots that you can turn. One to the south side of the road and one to the north side of the road, between Evelina and Hart Road. There will only be 2. It's not going to work well. We're upset before you even entered into the picture, so it's not going to work well. All right?
Thank you for coming. Vicki Davis Adams. No relation to the prior speaker.
No, but I am Vicki Adams III in Carriage Village. There are 3 of us.
In the community?
Yes. I live at 206 Harvest Lane, and my parents were here long ago, so I'm familiar with the area. We have only resided there since, this is our 2nd winter. But I have the same concerns as everybody else. The traffic, the emergency vehicles, at least, I would say at least 3 times a week, there's an ambulance coming in, you know, and I just don't understand where they get this, that it'd be less vehicles to have 180 units.
They're comparing it to that number of residential single-family dwellings. They're not saying that it's less cars than are currently on the road. They're comparing the trip generated by a multifamily unit versus a single-family unit.
Well, they probably each got 2 cars. Everybody does nowadays. So that's over 300, almost 400 more vehicles, if they only go once a day. I would like to see studies of even in our park entrance and that, but that's with the FDOT. The thing I'm concerned about is, of course, the environment, the turtles, the runoff. I mean, where is all of this going to go? You know, I was not.
Were you present for the engineer's presentation?
Yes, I was. I was present for that, but I just don't think it's going to compute with that many people. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. John Tope?
Hi, my name is John Tope. I live at 1374 Lincoln Avenue, which is across the south side of Bayshore. The photograph the traffic engineer showed with 3 cars on Bayshore Road, he must have been there at 5 in the morning because traffic is backed up from Hart Road to Evelyn and during rush hour traffic. It takes me sometimes 15 minutes to get out of my street, and it is going to be directly across the street from this development. And they're talking having left turns going in and right. It's going to be such a traffic impedance, it's amazing. You've asked for comps on comparable buildings. On Hancock Bridge in 41, that's a commercial area. There's no residential. As far as Merchant Crossing, again, commercial area, no residential. This is in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It's not going to work. I mean, the drainage is the biggest issue that I see. They're going to direct that water to Bayshore Road. They're going to put it down Bayshore, across Hart, going to the Caloosahatchee. We have septics in our neighborhood. When it rains, our toilets don't work. The culverts completely fill up with water with over 1 inch of rain. They're going to direct that water to the drainage, which ours is supposed to go to. It's not going to drain even worse. I mean, I don't know what we would think about, but sometimes you wait a day to flush the toilet. And they're proposing putting all that water into the drainage into the Caloosahatchee. It's not going to work. You people really need to consider what you're doing here. This ain't going to work for our neighborhood.
Thank you. Kathleen Colley? Coughley? It's C-A-U-G-H-E-Y? Not speaking. Not speaking. Greg Foy.
I don't have anything, what he just said, is what I was worried about, the water runoff. There ain't no place for it to go.
Okay, if you're going to speak, you have to come to the podium.
Can I add something?
Did you already speak?
Yeah, can I add one point? Our neighborhood was slated for sewers years ago by the development.
You have to come to the, sir, you have to go to the podium.
What's that?
You need to go to the podium if you're going to speak, sir. This is still John Tope.
John Tope, I'm sorry, appreciate the time. Our neighborhood was supposed to have sewers put in years ago after I called about the drainage. And they said it was proposed because the drainage was supposed to flow south and it tends to flow north. This needs to be addressed. I mean, they want to build this thing. Why don't you take care of the tax-paying residents so we have adequate sewers and septics in our neighborhood before you're allowed in the building and compound the problem?
Okay, thank you. Randall White.
I thought Greg was coming up.
He chose not to, Greg Foy chose not to speak. Randall White, followed by Rhonda White.
My name's Randy White. I live at 210 Captain's Walk. I have been in the residential rental unit for 40-some years. I assume that these are going to be all rental properties, including the 89 bonus units. Am I correct?
We'll ask them to clarify that when we get back to them.
There have been 2 projects, I'm from Indiana, in my hometown that were high-density rental units.
Hometown Fort Myers?
No, hometown Lafayette, Indiana. These high-density rental units ultimately led to extensive police and fire protection. So much so that one of them got condemned by our mayor. It was about a 400-unit complex. It totally got condemned. As I said, I've been in the residential rental unit for many years. I actually hired kids or young adults from the second complex to work for me. And in saying that, these guys that worked for me had to carry knives, guns. Drug use was prolific in the neighborhood, and this is the second compound. And that one is on its way to being condemned by the mayor. I want to know if these are residential rental units, if they're low-income residential units, and those 89 bonus ones, and how that is going to cause the public fire protection, police protection, etc., to be overloaded.
Okay. We ask that the parties make a note of that question and respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rhonda White? This one time he speaks for you?
That was a good one.
Ivan Lamb.
I'll pass.
Okay, thank you. Betty Lamb. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm Betty Lamb, 131 Chisholm Trail. I have the same concerns that all the other ones have had. So, but whenever you come up with all these parking spaces, are they allowing 2 cars to a unit?
Okay, we'll ask that they supply that information.
Okay. But I am concerned about everything that the other ones have, so it's no use for me to repeat the questions.
Okay, and just as an aside, and they'll get into detail with this with regard to the number of parking spaces, that's driven by the land development code that says you need to provide X number of parking spaces per unit.
Okay, thank you.
Carol Robinson. Thank you. Denise Sexton.
I'll pass.
Frank Mendoza.
I'm also a resident of Carriage Village, 381 Santa Fe Trail. All the bases were covered on what I was going to talk about. I just want to go on record, so in case I find something else, at the next meeting I can talk. And what was it, May 5th or April 5th?
Well, the continuation of this hearing will be May 5th.
Okay.
But if you've already spoke as a member of the public, you will not be given a second opportunity. We will go through the names of the people who did not speak.
Okay, well, I just misunderstood that, and I just wanted to go on record. Thanks.
Thank you. Teresa Inabit. See how it's spelled?
I'm Teresa Nabnett in Carriage Village, 234 Santa Fe. My concern will be the crime increasing in our area with that many units going in. And I'm concerned, like everybody else is, about the traffic and the everything overflowing when there's that much more put in there. Also, the pond will create more mosquitoes, and will that be taken care of? And that's all I have.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
what will the pond create?
Mosquitoes.
Oh, mosquitoes.
Next name is just Birdie. Birdie. Can you state your full name for the record, ma'am?
Birdie Jane Rich, and I'm at 157 Overland Trail in Carriage Village. I haven't heard too much about the turtles. I'm concerned about them. I don't know how they anticipate to get every single one of them. And like they were saying with Del Webb, if we have to go all the way up to Hart Road to do a U-turn and come back into our park, with the Del Webb 800 units, there's going to be gobs of traffic, and you might have to sit out there for hours. The same with our emergency vehicles. How are they supposed to get there? And adding that, it's not going to help. It's only going to make it worse. That's all.
Thank you for coming, ma'am. Linda Jarrow. Linda Jarrow? Okay. Even if you didn't speak, if you provided your email or mailing address, you will receive a copy of further notices in connection with this hearing, and also a copy of my recommendation and notice of the final board hearing. Tim Latour.
I'm Latore, 158 Santa Fe Drive, and I'm concerned about the height of the buildings, being I back right up to the property, and there's no way you can hide a 4-story building behind my house. I don't care how tall the trees are. And
Tim, can I ask you, are you to the north of the project or to the west of the project?
I am and 60-foot barrier isn't that far. I mean, the width of my property is 50 foot. So we're not talking that much difference in between hiding in buildings with 50 feet. And my personal opinion is it should be left as residential, single-family homes. I can live with somebody backed up to my house, not a four-story building. So I don't know where they come that a four-story building is better than a single-family home. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Cheryl Buss? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Buss. I live at 205 Shenandoah, also in Carriage Village. There is one question that I would like to ask, and that has to do with the units themselves. Are they going to be rental units, or are they going to be owned units?
Okay, I will ask them to make a note of that, and they will address that when we go back on the record for them to supplement their presentation.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, if these are multifamily, meaning there's probably going to be children involved with this situation, is there going to be a limit to the number of children that are allowed, or depends upon the bedrooms that are in each unit? The other concern then has to do with traffic. If you have children here, they're going to have to go to school. So now you've got a school bus involved in this traffic situation that we're already very concerned about. If they have to go and make a U-turn at Hart Road, how is that going to impact, besides our bus schedule and them stopping and backing up traffic? The school bus is going to definitely back up traffic because everybody has to stop. Unfortunately for myself, I have not had an opportunity or taken the opportunity to walk through this to see about the tortoises, but I do feel like that is a big issue for the environmental safety. So back to the children. If you're going to have kids living in this unit, where's an area for them to have a basketball court or have some kind of outdoor activity? Is that going to be in one of the indigenous zones, or, you know, where might that be? Is this going to be someplace that we're going to have a basketball court in somebody's backyard listening to the kids? I don't have a thing against kids. I have several, and lots of grandkids. I'm just saying, we're a retirement community now, 55 and over. So it's always nice to see the grandkids, but it's sometimes even nicer when they go home. Also, as far as the drive in and out of this proposed unit, or these proposed units, if we have traffic issues that are backing up onto Bayshore, how long is this drive? Is this drive going to be one that can accommodate 6, 8, 10 cars trying to get out because of rush hour traffic? Or what are their plans for that? Other than that, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak and the opportunity
appreciate that you came today.
to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Steve Foster, followed by Bev Foster.
You know, I signed no to that sheet, but after listening to several people talk, I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and I'll speak.
Okay, that yes or no is for the office use, but that's okay.
Yeah, my name's Steve Foster. I'm at 206 Carriage Lane, and our house backs right up to the woods, okay?
Concerning the traffic, I understand when the fellow here with the expertise in the traffic and so forth mentioned putting the medium strip, or maybe he didn't, but I heard that the medium strip was going to go down Bayshore Road, which at first I thought, well, that's not a bad idea. And I'll tell you why. Because as it is right now, coming out and making a left turn, there's been 2 serious accidents already. One car was totaled, as I remember, and another one was hit real bad, and somebody was hurt pretty bad, trying to make a left turn. So if you put the median strip down there, they no longer can go over the median strip and make a left turn. So going down the other way and making a U-turn to come back might be the solution. But in the same token, if you have that many people going out to the right and then having to make a U-turn to go to the left, because the way I understood it, there's not going to be any entranceway to Carriage Village as well as the new complex. That's the way I understood it. I'm not sure I understood it right. But anyway, if you've got to make a right turn and then got to make a U-turn and come left the other way, now you got 2 ways to go, 2 places that you have to make a U-turn. Going out and coming back. You're going to have to make a U-turn. And again, I go along with the other comments as far as the traffic situation the way it is now and the U-turn. I think there'll be a lot more accidents happen with U-turns. And when it comes to emergency vehicles and they have to make the U-turns, and then traffic coming from the other way to have to make U-turns, I think it's a really a bad idea with the traffic situation. That's the main thing. The height of the buildings, the only thing I can say about that being backed up to the woods is the light shining down from the back of the apartments. And if they shine down from that side of the apartments, I have no idea where the windows are put or anything else. But I think this will be something else that people won't be too satisfied with that live close to the woods as we do. So those 2 things I'm concerned about. I didn't know anything about the drainage problem, but I did hear, we went to the meeting, the first one, and heard about the elevation. I think that's also something that I'd like to find out about, what the elevation is going to be and how much water is going to be. The first meeting, they said, oh, that won't have any effect. It will drain off of there and into these pipes they're talking about that goes around the back and back into the other. But I'm also very happy to hear the gentleman that talked about the sewage and the water problem coming down into Hart Road. I was unaware of that. I was unaware that people's toilets, because ours doesn't back up so far. And so, but I was very interested in what he said about the problems that they have already. And is this going to be addressed before this ever happens? That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bev Foster?
She passes.
Bev, you filled out 2. Gary Griffin? Gary Griffin. Ken Eaton.
Ken.
Susan Fritsch. Judith Peterson.
My name is Judith Peterson. I live at 165 Overland Trail. I'm opposed to the rezoning of DCI2022-00048 Bayshore Pines. I'm a homeowner in the Carriage Village community, which is located just east of the project. My concerns center around the increase in an already dangerous traffic situation on Bayshore. The current speed rate is 50 miles an hour, and that road is currently utilized to the maximum. I also do not believe a 90 or 180 unit apartment complex fits into the existing single-family home aesthetically in our neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for coming. Gary Peterson.
also at 165 Overland, Gary Peterson. My concern is the proposed building height of 4 stories. I believe that a 2-story building would be more acceptable, less apartments, so less traffic, less density. And the gentleman that talked about, would you rather being backed up to a home with a pool cage or a apartment building? I think most people that live in a single-family home would rather back up to a single-family home and a pool cage as opposed to facing a 4-story apartment building. I believe that it's not in tune with the community around it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Welkovich?
I pass.
Bernadine Welkovich? Robert Edmonds?
Robert Edmonds, 26 Carriage Lane. We're in this is a nice little community, and this is going to be just atrocious to what we have. I mean, there's no other buildings like this going up around our area. Down at Weaver Corners, that's in a commercial area, so that's a lot different. This is a residential area, you know. The crime rate is what's really concerns. You know, we're a retirement community. We're living there and we're very, very happy with what we got. And this is going to upset us an awful lot. The size of the building is way too big. God bless.
Thank you. Shauna Kane? Angela Smith? Good morning, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Angela Smith, 205 Santa Fe Trail. I just want to add the people that you've been calling that had to leave. We had a guy pass away all of a sudden. He was at his church, fell off a ladder and died. So that's where they went. So they'll probably be back for the next meeting. And I'm not going to be one of those persons that says, I agree, you know, I'm going to agree with that guy and that guy. I'm going to kind of rehash everything that I'm concerned about. First of all, I've, like Russ, has been back there in the turtle preserve, and it's like a condo association for turtles. There are mounds and mounds of turtles back there. There are not just 15. I would say it's closer to 100, seriously. Drainage. We already have flooding in our in our park in the summertime. If it rains an inch in 15 minutes, we're underwater in our roads. We have a great drainage system in there and pumps that pump it out to Bayshore and to the ravine that's directly across from me, which I will point out in a second. Last year, actually, I was stuck in the front of our park for over an hour because the water was deeper than the hood of my car. If the state does not come out and clean that drainage ditch is between Bayshore and us, if they don't keep that totally clean, there is nowhere for the water to go. Now you're talking about putting in 4-story buildings on a raised amount of dirt, which we don't know what that is. But when you do that, where do you think that watershed's gonna go? It's not only gonna go into their little lake back there that they're talking about, it's gonna come towards us, and it's gonna go towards the neighbors on the west side also. There's already an issue, okay? I just want you guys to really think about that part. Traffic. Can I have a better, can I have that one picture that has the area, but it shows Bayshore? Maybe even the one with the 2 cars.
Do you want an aerial?
Can you go back?
Did you see?
There's those big aerials.
No.
interstate, I don't know if she needs that.
There was another,
That's a pretty good one.
that's a pretty good one. All right. Can I come up here?
Yes, of course.
All right. So this is us, right? I live down this way. There is, right now, what I call a suicide lane in the middle of Bayshore, where you can come in to turn left or right, and sometimes you meet up on traffic. I don't like that part. Before the FDOT meeting, I was under the impression they're gonna put that in, it's gonna make it safer, they're gonna give us a left turn lane, okay? They're not. They're giving Shirley, which is down around here, a left turn lane. There's 15 houses in there, okay? They're not gonna give us a left turn lane to get into our park. We have 390 some units in our park, okay? So we're gonna have to go down to Hart with 2 lanes of traffic here, fit into that turn lane to make a U-turn to come back and into our park. That is a problem on its own without adding 189 units here. We already have Del Webb going in, 850 units. Single story, thank you. But there's another 850 houses that probably have 2 cars. They're just starting to fill them up back there. So we have that traffic issue. I'm on the board also. I'm a head of refuge. I have huge trash trucks that come in to pick up our refuge. They're not gonna be able to make this U-turn. None of them are gonna be able to make that U-turn to come into our village. And now we're gonna add all the more traffic for them to get into us to get our garbage picked up. That's gonna be an issue. If we have another hurricane and the FEMA trucks come in to pick up stuff, they're really big. They couldn't even get down some of our streets because of lower power lines. So thank God our community came together and they put it back in the compound, and I was finally able to get FEMA to come in and get them in the compound to pick it up. And we took Bobcats and went to the back residence of people, get their stuff to bring up there so we could get that taken care of. But a FEMA truck is never gonna get in there. And there's not really, the only choice we would have is there's like a 7-Eleven here in Winn-Dixie. I don't know when this thing was taken. I guess that's the Winn-Dixie and this is 7-Eleven here. So the only opportunity for them to do anything is come, take a right into New Post Road, go into the parking lot here at Winn-Dixie, to come back out here to get to our village. Because they are not gonna make this. Problem 2, ambulance and fire trucks. Like somebody said, there is not a fire truck in North Fort Myers that has the ability to put out 4-story fire, okay? Probably, I wanna guess 6 years ago, a gentleman who I know very well, his house burnt to the ground because the fire truck 30 minutes to get to our village. So we watched it burn down the ground because back then, even with that traffic, we could not get them there soon enough. And they're not that far down Bayshore. How many houses are gonna be in that jeopardy? Where the fire trucks can't even get in without all this mess, and now we're gonna put more problems in their way. I really have a concern about that. The drainage. Like I said, there's a ditch that goes along here between Bayshore and the back of our buildings there, our homes. We have pumps in different areas that pump things out. We also have a, I can tell where this is. This is the back part of our area, and I'm about right here. So this is a channel ditch that collects rainwater, and we also have pumps that pump into that. That goes down to Bayshore and gets sent to Caloosahatchee. Now we're gonna put in this many more houses and have raised area for that water to be flowing off towards us and these guys. And that water is gonna go where? When it's already full in the summertime? This ditch is up high, all these stay full. It's a problem. It's a real problem. I don't understand exactly from their talk and their screens, what is the burn? I don't know whether they're putting solid walls up 15 feet high, or if they're just talking the pine trees and stuff that are already there and adding some bushes to it. Well, those pine trees are already here, only have foliage in the top. There's sticks on the bottom, so they're not gonna give anybody any sight barrier.
Okay, we'll have them explain what a berm is and how that relates to the landscaping they're going to install.
Okay, because I would like to hear more about that.
Okay, I think
Where
there should be
solid
more.
walls are gonna be, where they're just putting trees. Because if they're just leaving this and putting a few bushes, there's never gonna be any sight barrier whatsoever.
Okay.
So I don't mind having this built, but I do think they need to keep it a single level to match everything that's around here. I know none in North Fort Myers that is more than one story. I know none. Burton's Crossing, that's in Cape Coral. It's not North Fort Myers. Literally, I can't think of any building that's more than one story. Like I said, I don't mind if they build in there, but we need to decrease the ratio a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna break there for public input. I do have more sheets. Those people who did not have their name called, you will have an opportunity to speak on May 5th. I want to make a few comments before we conclude the hearing for today, directed at staff and the applicant. Additional information I would like presented when we close public input and go back to you. I would like detailed explanation of what the site elevation is now and how much fill would be brought in. And where is the height of this 60-foot building going to be measured from, existing grade or as filled as necessary to comply with flood regulations? I would like to know whether this is going to be an age-restricted community, and if not, where on the site plan you are accommodating a school bus drop-off and pickup. I would like, as I requested before, an analysis of the density of surrounding development, both north and south of Bayshore Road. Also, regardless of whether it's age restricted or not, I want to revisit the subject of an amenity area, particularly if it's not going to be age restricted. I just want more information on the design of the site and how we are accommodating the bus stop and potential amenity area for children that may be living there. And let me just check my other notes for a moment, if you can bear with me. Okay, a little more information from the transportation expert. I mean, that seems to be a main concern. So if perhaps he can contact FDOT and get more information. He didn't seem to be very knowledgeable on the potential for the installation of a barrier. I think that's going to be important. And how is that factoring in or going to factor into site design at the development order stage in terms of weaving your turn lanes in and out and all that. Just a little bit more information since the surrounding property owners seem to be very concerned about safety and traffic. And I think that's it for now. When we resume on the 5th, hang on a second, we will go back to this list of public that filled out these forms. I will call each person that has not already spoken. Members of the public, if you have already spoken, you will not be given a second opportunity to speak. So get with your neighbor who hasn't already spoken if you think of an additional question, so that they can ask on your behalf. Yes.
You didn't mention the utilities, what their plans are for
Okay,
upgrading that.
hang on. These are my questions. They had to take notes of all your questions, and I am expecting them to address all the issues raised by the public when we get back to staff and the applicant. So just because I didn't ask for that doesn't mean it's not going to be addressed. These were things that came to my mind as I was listening to you, and I wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to supplement the record with more information on that. Yes.
I'm sorry, I forgot to bring up one thing is.
Okay, hang on. Did you already speak?
Yes, I spoke.
Okay, you're done. Does anyone else have a question about the procedure?
Can you give us a list of the names who haven't spoken so we can make sure we get the additional?
You can contact my secretaries. I'll give you the number of our office, and they can scan these sheets and send it to you via email if you provide your name. The number for my office is 533-8100. And if you need a copy of the staff report or names of people who have not spoken yet or whatever, my staff will be happy to provide you with that.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, you will receive an email if you provided your email to us. Yes.
I had a question. Many of the residents at Carriage Village are seasonal, so we won't be here for the May 5th meeting. Is there any way we can access online?
There's going to be no way for you to participate unless you want to send written comments to me, but this will not secure you an opportunity to speak before the board. That's why I announced early on, if there's anybody that's not going to be available to speak after today, please allow them to go first, but I don't have a lot of freedom there.
Not even to view it or watch?
Oh, can you watch these proceedings? Yes. You can view it online. Please call my office, 533-8100. They'll explain to you exactly how you can do that.
Thank you very much.
So I just want to make sure that, because they heard my question about the barriers, that they come back with a lot more detail about.
They are going to address the questions raised by the public.
Okay.
Thank you. And does anyone else have questions about the procedure? I look forward to seeing you all on May 5th. Thank you for coming. That concludes the hearing.